So I had a viewer who sent me this really interesting bit. We've interacted a number of times, and I thought it was worth sharing. I think it's worth sharing for a couple of reasons. One, I spend a lot of time with Russian state media, with propaganda, trying to understand why do the Russians say what they do. And as most professors are, they go into this field because they're curious. They ask a lot of questions. So research flows from asking, why is that happening? And that kind of thing. So that's kind of my approach when I'm looking at Russian state media, when I'm looking at why are the repeaters repeating the Russian state media, those kind of questions. The second reason is because I want to highlight this viewer. His name is Rob Reynolds, and we've interacted a number of times in the past. He's doing some really interesting things, but he sent me this. He said, "Hi, Professor Gerdes. I hope all is well with you. Since you have a good grasp on how evil America is, I'm sure you understand," now this was in quotes, right? "I'm sure you understand how difficult it must be for the average American to understand why Russia feels that way." And that's a great thought. Like, the average American doesn't understand, like, why is Russia so, like, consumed with calling America evil and that sort of thing. Okay, next paragraph. "I hope and I think you see their anti-American rhetoric is actually something to be proud of." That line hit me like a thunderbolt. I'm like, that's right. That's exactly right. Let me read it again. "I hope and I think you see their Russia's anti-American rhetoric is actually something to be proud of." Well, what's going on? Why is Russia so, like, anti-America? I can't stand you. You're evil. You're this, you're that. Well, we have to tear you down. You have to tear them down because they're a threat. The United States is still a massive threat to Russian ambitions of being this awesome thing that they think that they were at some time when there were the evil empire that is the Soviets, and now they're a fraction of it as Russia, and they hope to reclaim something. Like that's part of what's motivating. But I'm getting ahead of myself. He said, "It would be interesting if you did a video sometime to dig into Russia's fear of the U.S." Now, I'm probably not going to do an entire video about that. I may comment on that periodically, but I'm not going to spend an entire video on that. But there is something to that. There's this if it's not a fear, it's a animosity toward the U.S. because they're a rival. This is, by the way, how China thinks about the United States and why they're building up their military. And I didn't make this up. I got this from military sources who have told me, yes, that is Chinese ambition. It's to be a hegemon within the region. And while we don't plan to be a hegemon in the region around China, we stand in their way from some of their ambitions, including Taiwan. So if you think about it in those terms, and it's really, really interesting, we stand in the way of Russia's ambitions to be what they think they once were. And I think that's a lot of what's driving this. Okay, they are afraid that the U.S. will come and take all of their resources. Well, they do talk about that kind of thing. It's pretty remarkable, but they have this almost irrational fear. No, not almost. It is a rational fear that the U.S. is just going to come just try to take their stuff. We're really not that into you. Before February 24th, we weren't really even thinking about you a lot. And that's part of the problem, but that's also the reality. Okay, it's rather strange. It's a rather strange fear, as mineral deposits are rather difficult to simply remove from a country. As you realize, the Russians fear this because this is exactly what they've done to the lands they've conquered, and now they're projecting onto the U.S. Man, if I could give you an A, that's exactly what Russia does. Whatever they see the U.S. doing, or Ukraine doing, or whoever else the West, the collective West, whoever else they consider as a bad guy doing, they have this projection on them of whatever they're doing on them. It's just an amazing thing. Like, the U.S. is doing one thing, Russia does the opposite, and it's a bad thing to be doing, and then they project that on the U.S. It's wow. I think your viewers would appreciate you spelling this out, as any normal person would really struggle to accept this fear as being genuine. There is a simultaneous, and I've said this in another video way back when, this was maybe 6 months ago, but there's this weird simultaneous, we're the best, and simultaneously we are embattled on all fronts and we have to defend our motherland. It's almost schizophrenic. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but that is kind of what's in the Russian psyche. Okay, the big issue of this war for the Russians is that if they lose, it will mean that they are not the superior race destined to rule all, and they have their whole identity tied up in this dream. It's really interesting, especially the way that he even phrased that is interesting, given how the Nazis saw themselves and how they're complaining. Like, this is an example of it, how they're complaining that, see these Nazis over here and we got to go eradicate them. But this is how they treat the rest of the world, and they've taken a 20% slice of Moldova. Well, maybe not quite 20%. The big slice of Moldova, a 20% slice of Ukraine, a 20% slice of Georgia. This is what they're doing. Okay, imagine the American dream. Now, this was really impressive. Imagine the American dream, which exists not just in America, but in Europe and Asia, also thanks to the evil U.S., evil again in quotes, evil U.S., ending permanently. So imagine if the American dream was ending permanently. The American dream is like, I can, achieve my dreams and work hard and succeed, and then I can pass on a better life to my kids, and they'll have a better life than their kids, and that kind of thing. Imagine if that dream ended permanently. That's what he's saying. That is the feeling that the Russians are scared of now. Wow, I think he's really onto something here. I think that he's connecting some dots in ways that I hadn't necessarily connected. They cannot stop until they are broken, and when they are broken, they'll be devastated. I think he's right. That's exactly right. They will be broken, and they will be devastated when they're broken. They didn't have to start this war, but it's only going to end by one side or the other being just shattered, and I believe that will be the Russians. Nevertheless, this is needed in order for them to heal in the long term, like Germany after World War II. That's exactly right. Germany and Japan are far better off after having lost World War II and being reformed and redeveloped than if they had continued on their very militaristic courses independently, like the Bushido culture in Japan, or the German culture that allowed World War I and II, and potentially another one if they had been defeated and then had grievances, because this is where Russia is with the grievances, right? And then came back in another generation for another time. Okay, so they're saying, nevertheless, this is what's needed in order for them to heal in the long term. The end is coming faster and faster for them now. Now, I don't know about how much faster it is. I think the end is coming, but it's going to take a long time. It's not going to be over anytime soon, but I think it will end decisively. The end is coming, and it's faster and faster for them now. This time next year, things will be dire for them. Things have already moved too far to stop. Their end is inevitable. I don't think it'll be fast, but I do think the end is inevitable. And it's almost like the mouse that roared. At the end of the book, the best thing that could happen. Okay, so the mouse that roared was this book that this country realized that whenever they go to war, I think with the U.S., anytime if they lose, they get rebuilt, and they go to war, and then they actually accidentally win, and it's an ironic thing. So, but what Russia really needs to do, and for the best case scenario for Russia, is to be defeated and then to be rebuilt in a way where they don't do this kind of nonsense again, because their neighbors are not at peace with them. Their neighbors can't have rest. They can't have peace while they're doing this kind of thing, and it's terrible. So that's what we really need to see here, is some kind of post-World War II rebuilding of Germany in a way where we just get away from that. This is why, they don't tolerate Holocaust deniers in Germany, and that's for a reason, because that was terrible. We don't want to go down that path again. What Russia's doing is terrible. We don't want to go down this path again. And that's where we are. Okay, at any rate, Rob did such a great job here. It was very insightful. I so appreciate my audience, because you guys have fed me all kinds of ideas, videos. Hey, have you seen this? Have you heard about that? Have you watched this? And I so much appreciate it. What's on YouTube is a conversation. It's not just the sage on the stage. I'm not just lecturing at you. We're interacting with each other. And if I haven't commented on of your posts, and I try to read as many as I can, if I haven't commented, don't take that as a slight. I'm trying to read and process as much as I can, but I can't get back to everyone. All right, that's all that I have. thank you for the time, the attention, the listening to the case that was laid out here. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the coffees, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.